applicable sanctions. In fact, we have taken various steps just over the last 6-7 weeks to identify companies that we felt were violating those sanctions, and have been very clear to the Iranians that there's not going to be any let-up. In discussions with President Hollande, he feels the same way, as do all the P5+1 members. And so businesses may be exploring, are there some possibilities to get in sooner rather than later, if and when there is a actual agreement to be had. But I can tell you that they do so at their own peril right now, because we will come down on them like a ton of bricks, with respect to the sanctions that we control, and we expect full compliance with respect to the P5+1 during this interim. We don't want new sanctions, because the ones we have in place are already squeezing around and brought them to the table. But we also want to send a message to the Iranians that if they don't resolve this broader issue of their nuclear program, that there will be consequences, and that the sanctions regime not only will stay in place, but will likely be tightened in the event that these talks fail.
Bon, Barack a été très complet, donc je vais donner...
Barack gave you a very comprehensive answer, so I shall now sketch the French approach on the issues that were mentioned. Only in a few words. First of all, Geneva II. The only purpose of this conference is to make political transition possible. It's not about discussing humanitarian measures only. It's all about making sure that a political change be possible, which eventually will have to take place in Syria. We encouraged the democratic opposition to go to Geneva and to demonstrate that they are prepared to commit themselves to this process and to this approach. And if some of them are blocking, there's no prize for guessing who it is. It is the Syrian regime. One other observation, a conclusion, as a matter of fact. We should help along the humanitarian situation, and that is why a resolution will be voted at the NUSC. And we will see again who speaks clearly on the issue of the Syrian question and who is partisan. How can you object to humanitarian corridors? Why would you prevent the vote of a resolution if, in good faith, it is all about saving human lives? So we decided to go all the way and to get these clarifications. Third question, the chemical weapons stockpile. Barack Obama and myself, when we were presented with a proof of the use that had been made by the Assad regime of chemical weapons, we decided that resorting to force was an option. And it is precisely because we made this decision that the option of a negotiation was also kept on the agenda. It is precisely for that reason that President Putin made this offer in circumstances you are all familiar with. This led to the destruction of some of the chemical weapons, but I agree with you, it is a very long-winded process. It's only partial destruction, and it certainly doesn't go nearly far enough. So rules were adopted, particularly within the framework of the Security Council resolution in case of non-observance. And we shall resort to these measures and enforce them. Chemical weapons have to be destroyed fully, and pressure will be exerted fully. And then there are choices. We chose to support the democratic opposition. We chose to make sure that the democratic opposition is an alternative, even though negotiations will have to take place at the Geneva conference. You asked me a question about French businessmen in Iran, their trip to Iran. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the French situation, the President of the Republic is not the President of the Employers' Union in France. And he certainly doesn't wish to be. And I don't think anyone wishes for him to be so. So companies just make their decisions when it comes to traveling. But I certainly let them know that sanctions were in force and would remain in force. And if contacts were to be made with a view to a new situation in Iran, a situation where Iran would have renounced the nuclear weapon fully and comprehensively, well, unless such a new situation would prevail, no commercial agreement could be signed. That's what I told French businessmen, and they are very much aware of this situation. And as far as sanctions are concerned, they will only be lifted if and when there is a definite agreement. And during this period of an interim agreement, they remain in force. French question perhaps now? Figaro.
Thank you, Mr. President, for this warm welcome for the French nation and for taking our questions. You have actually praised France very warmly today and granted our President the first state visit of your second term. Does that mean that France has become the best European